This is the audiobook sample for Creators of the Galaxy, the Nether Souls Series Book 1, by Rebecca Jose. This is my 33rd audiobook, and it was released on January 29th, 2021. This book is great for anyone interested in a new author's attempt to craft a compelling world and a likable, sizable cast of main characters, which is a daunting task, even for the most experienced authors. It's never easy to take an idea you have and write a story about it, and certainly not a story as grandiose and ambitious as this one. For the purposes of narrowing down the scope for this video, I'm going to take a look at Gatu, the hero, and how I felt about him as a protagonist. Though the story as a whole didn't offend me, without spoiling too much of the plot, I must admit I didn't really like Gatu as a protagonist. He gave off the impression of a young child's attempt to write a hero, describe him as having a silly personality, and give him an absolute boatload of superpowers, and call it a day. If you read or listen to the novel, you'll see what I mean about calling it a boatload. Gatu obtains a new power almost every chapter, and sometimes even twice a chapter. I have two main issues with this approach to a protagonist. My first is that if a book tells you a hero is witty and jokes a lot, you expect to see them make jokes, which is not really the case for Gatu, though he does make a few. Most of his humor fell flat to me, and much of the dialogue he shares with others is either them deciding what to do next, having an expository conversation about how the world works, or him self-reflecting in a serious, or oftentimes frightened, manner. If both the book and the character himself tell you directly that he's going to be witty, I'd like to see more of that. My second main issue I have is with him having so many powers. Because he can do so much, the rest of the characters get washed out by comparison. Now here's a little bit of a spoiler for an example, so if you want to get right into the audiobook sample, remember that you can skip this bit with the timestamp in the description if you're watching on YouTube. So, there's a character introduced later in the novel who can manipulate plant life, which is a really cool idea. And then Gatu can suddenly also manipulate plant life in either the next chapter or the one after that, which, to me, completely robs the last character of her independence and uniqueness. And you think maybe the story will rectify this by having her mentor him on this particular power, which seems to be the intention. But both Gatu's girlfriend and the story itself go out of their way to explain to you, multiple times in the story's case, that Gatu doesn't need training, and that all of his powers will develop just fine on their own as long as he repeatedly uses them. So you can see why I find this manner of protagonist stifling and restrictive. The story will inevitably bend to their will and satisfaction. For the most part, however, there's a lot of entertainment value in this title beyond this. I just wanted to focus on one topic for this video. I hope you enjoy this audiobook sample. I open my newborn eyes and see the doctors fussing over my sister. She was born just a few minutes after I was. She had been a surprise, because she was hidden behind me while we were in the womb. I was not placed into this body until after the birth, but I heard the doctors talking about the surprise twin birth. I could hear my sister crying in the incubator beside my plastic hospital crib, and I knew she was dying. Nothing the doctors did would help. She was dying, and only I could help her. I did not know how I knew this. I just did. I knew that if I could touch my sister, that I could heal her. I did not know how I knew this either. I just did. I tried to form words, as the doctors did. I could hear them talking, and I could understand what they were saying. I tried to talk like that, but the only thing that came out of my mouth were whimpers, sounds, and cries of frustration as I tried and tried to make my mouth form the words I so desperately needed to say. "Give her to me! Let me touch her!" I kept trying to say, but I just kept whimpering and crying. My cries became so loud that, eventually, a nurse picked me up from my crib and rocked me, as she cooed in a soothing manner. This did not help. It only made me more frustrated, because I could not talk to her and tell her what I wanted to say. After a few long minutes, the doctors stopped working on my sister and concentrated on me. My sister was deemed in stable condition by the doctors, and she lay quietly in the incubator and did not cry again. They had hooked her up to some tubes, and wires snaked from patches they had placed along her body. I could hear the steady beep, beep, beep of the monitors as her heart continued to beat, and I knew that she was definitely not in stable condition. The doctors cleaned me up and swaddled me into a cozy blanket. It did not console me, however, because my sister was slowly fading away. I knew she had some time, but she was suffering nonetheless. I did not want her to suffer any longer than necessary. All I had to do was touch her, and she would heal. Finally, after what seemed like forever, they gently picked up my sister and set her in a little plastic crib, like the one I had lain in. They hung the bags of liquids that were attached to the tubes coming out of her body to a rod that was attached to her crib, and they attached the monitor to the crib as well, so it would move with the crib. The nurse that was holding me put me back into my little plastic crib, and we were both wheeled into another room. There, a woman lay in a hospital bed. She looked worn and tired, but her eyes lit up with happiness as we were brought to her. They picked up my sister first, and gently placed her into the woman's arms. The doctor took a minute to explain all the wires and tubes coming from her, and the numbers on the monitor, and what they meant. The woman's eyes turned sad for a second, until the doctor picked me up and gently placed me in her other arm. "Meet your mother," the doctor told me, as he laid me in the crook of the woman's other arm, opposite my sister. I looked up into her sad eyes, and tried to motion towards my sister. "Let me touch her, and I will fix her," I tried to say to her, but it just came out in a soft coo. This made the woman smile, and tears welled up in her eyes. She lifted me towards her face, and placed a gentle kiss on my forehead. As she lifted me, this put me in close proximity to the quiet baby in the crook of my mother's other arm. I tried to reach out and touch her, but my arm would not cooperate. It waved up and down swiftly, and I could not get the muscles to respond. Mother lifted my sister up even closer, as she placed a soft kiss on her forehead as well, and when she did, my arm brushed against my sister's arm in a split second. Just that second was all I needed. I thought, "Heal! Live!" The second I thought those words, a tremendous pain shot through my entire tiny body. It felt like I was being torn apart from the inside. A link to purchase Creators of the Galaxy is in the description below. This title was a royalty share production, so I make 20% from any purchases. Thanks for listening.